Hello, everyone. Are you ready for the final Akira Kurosawa film? I know I'm ready. I'm Ray Martindale.
I'm Austin Luger, and I'm also ready.
And he's ready as well. It's time to take 5 on Let's Take 5. But instead we'll be taking 1, which is the final of the 5, which is Ron by Akira Kurosawa. The previous films that we reviewed were Rashomon, Ikiru, The Seven Samurai, High and Low, and we are now on Ron as the final Akira Kurosawa film. Let's Take 5 is a podcast where we look at one of the legends in cinema history, and we take 5 of their films and we sort of break them down and go over them, and then we have a wrap-up episode where we announce the next person. So this is the final one of Akira Kurosawa. So I just want to get this out of the way. First of all, when we started the Akira Kurosawa Billy Wilder wrap-up, we said we were going to do Akira Kurosawa, and I said rank your 5 films, Austin. And he ranked them all, and then he said that Ron was my least favorite, and he said Ron was easily his favorite.
It's true.
What's changed?
I'm gonna stall a little bit on that because this is episode 15. We've done 15 different movies, and this is only the second film we watched together. Because we watched Ninotchka together.
Yes.
And we were fortunate to see this in 4K restoration at the Gene Siskel Film Center, and it looked gorgeous. And we talked a lot about the film afterwards, but you never asked me that question. I was actually waiting for the entire time.
I've just been... It just seems like a logical thing to ask at this point.
Yeah.
After we reach... Because if you've been listening to any of the other ones, not so much with Rashomon, but with Ikiru and Seven Samurai, according to you, Austin, he was kind of topping himself. You're like, Ikiru, that's got to be his best film. Seven Samurai, no, that's got to be his best film.
Right.
High and Low, not so much, even though we like the film, obviously.
Yeah.
And then we hit Ron, and what do we think?
And this has been kind of the big surprise going on. I thought this was an absolutely incredible film, but it's third on the list.
Third on the list.
Third
and it was easily the best.
It was easily the best.
So
this has been a really great revisiting. This works.
So do you want to list your 5 now, since we brought it up?
We'll wait that for the wrap-up.
Wait for the wrap-up. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that sounds good. That'll give us something to do on that episode anyway. So yes, as Austin mentioned, that we saw Ron at the Gene Siskel Center in downtown Chicago. And wow, what an amazing experience to get to see Kurosawa on the screen. It's an incredible movie. The company that we brought, Austin, you brought your girlfriend along with us, and I think there was some concern over whether or not she would like the film. I mean, we're going to watch a 2-hour and 45-minute Japanese epic, but she did.
She really liked it.
She really liked it.
And we also brought former guest of Let's Take 5, Pedro, who had seen it before, and his girlfriend, who I think liked it.
Yeah, they didn't seem to commit too much to it. I liked it a lot more this time. This is the third time I've seen the film, but this is the first time I was able to sit down and watch the film all in one setting. Previously, I'd always been divided into 2 settings. I think you really need to watch this movie and take it in as a whole.
Yeah.
Because the way the ebbs and flows of the plot work, there's 3 definitive acts of the film, I think, that some can get lost in translation unless you're willing to sit down there. And what I notice is, and actually watch the film, what I notice is that first act of the film that sort of sets up the exposition between, and I guess we should say now that this is based off King Lear.
Right.
The Lord Hidetori oh gosh, Japanese
They just kind of refer to him as Hidetori.
Hidetori. He's dividing his kingdoms. He's been a warring general his whole life. He's taken over basically Japan, and right here now he's trying to put a cap on the warring period and divide the lands between his 3 sons, Taro, Jiro, and Saburo. But the problem is when you've been a warlord your whole life and you've raised children that have known nothing but war, now saying, okay, peacetime, and here's the land. That doesn't tend to work out real well, and I thought that was the most boring part of the movie the first time I saw it. Actually, I think that's one of the best parts in the movie.
Oh, I thought it was incredible this time through because you just get this... It's the calmest period of the movie, for sure. It's beautiful. They're outside, wide shots. You see mountains and hills, and you see the grass, and you see all the colors of the tribes and everything. And the jester's doing his thing, and it's even so peaceful that the Hidetori just takes a nap, even.
Yeah.
And then he kind of wakes up. He has a bad dream, but he kind of realizes that this is his retirement plan is a good idea. He should go through with it. And I'm just watching in the theater and go, oh, you idiot. I'm biting my tongue going this is This is like the kids renting the cabin in the woods. Like, yeah, this will be a fun weekend.
Yeah, and Saburo, the youngest son, who gets the shaft as far as dividing up the lands are concerned, is also says you're an idiot.
Yeah.
And he gets chastised for it, but really he's being the most loyal because he's saying, your sons, including myself, he's saying he's not above it, we've been raised in war. These men are psychopaths.
Right.
This is not a good idea.
I thought a brilliant character moment. I think this was it had to have been a very meta decision because you had, when Hidetori hears these complaints, he asks for some arrows, and he gives an arrow piece to his son, says, break this arrow, and they each do easily. Then he gets 3 arrows and gives to the first son, can you break them together? And he can't, and he can't. They both kind of a bit exaggerated thing. I'm like, okay, I guess this is an older time. People don't know this kind of parable thing.
Yeah.
But clearly the son did because
Saburo, the third son,
he breaks them.
Yeah, he does. He puts it over his knee because, yes, you're right. If you just sit there and try to bend it, it's not going to break, but you can still break it over your knee.
Yeah.
And that sort of dirty trick is kind of what they end up doing to each other. So the whole kingdom ends up getting thrown into chaos. That's what Ron means in Japanese.
I've done that this weekend.
So it gets thrown into chaos. His sons turn against him. It turns into a war epic. We're not going to go into the plot in too big a detail. But he ends up losing his mind too, just like Lear does in the movie, as you would expect.
I was so impressed with this movie because it was a great way to end this 5 because with the films that he did earlier, especially with Rashomon, Ikiru, and Seven Samurai, those are such fast-paced movies that are really kind of playing with editing in a good way. The camera's always moving. Those are very vibrant movies. And this is 1985 now.
Yeah.
I mean, Rashomon was 1950.
You kind of lose track of Kurosawa, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like you consider being this director from a long time ago. It's like, not really.
No.
I mean, Ron was 85. All the stars in the movie are still alive.
Yeah. I mean, Scorsese acted in one of his movies. He's still around.
Yeah.
So, so curious that this just kind of felt like a film of an older man, which is, on one hand, it definitely feels that way. On the other hand, there's the best battle sequence you'll ever see with, a billion extras. So, it's much like Mad Max Fury Road, also made by an old man.
Yeah.
But, so curious, this just felt like maybe his most personal film.
Yes, at least his most popular personal film, I think.
Absolutely.
Because even after this film, he starts to dabble into death and sort of letting go.
Yeah.
Kurosawa had problems in his life. He attempted suicide. He was a depressive. There were other things that were going on with him. So he was always contemplative, I think. But something about the movies, particularly Ron, is about a man trying to let go and want peace as he lets go. But I think the tragedy here, too, is not just that Hidetori loses his mind, but also he's no longer in control, but he's not leaving the world a better place, right?
Exactly. And the shots were so much wider than those previous things. And obviously this film is in color, the first film that we're reviewing in color for Kurosawa. And you see this amazing scope, and you understand that, Hidetori, when he actually was in control, all of this land was his.
Yeah.
You always see all of this, and even when he kind of passes it over, just these long, long sequences where he's just kind of like living in the land, and you can't help but wonder just the idea of, what have I left for this world? What have I caused to happen? What have I left as my legacy?
And I think the movie answers that, and that's destruction and death.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that, this wasn't your land, you took it over.
Yeah.
You killed people, you burned castles to the ground, you stabbed people in the back. And that's accented through the film. And it's weird because you do feel sorry for him, but I think that's because it's within the context of the movie. What you have to, and I mean, maybe you feel sorry for him anyway, but you have to consider all the awful things that he did. And you're constantly reminded of that, and I think some of that gets lost. And I think that's to the movie's credit, actually, because after we left the film, Pedro, one of the people we saw the film with, notably from the Immortals podcast.
And this podcast.
He left, and he mentioned the character Lady Cade, because we were talking about Lady Cade, who is married to the oldest son. Once the oldest son gets killed, she then gets with the middle son, and then ends up getting the middle son to kill the youngest son, yada yada yada. And what you get is she seems very evil, right? And we walk out of the film, and Pedro said as much, right? Yeah. And I'm like, no, wait. Hidetori murdered her parents, burned her lands to the ground, and took over their castle and claimed it as his castle. And not only his castle, his first castle.
Yeah.
No, she's completely justified, but the movie doesn't give you that sort of context, so it's easy to get lost, and I think the muddledness actually helps the plot, right?
I think it's rather brilliant, because if this was a 10-hour epic, and you saw it as a Godfather saga of Hidetori as a young man, this final act of his life would be much different. We would watch it with a lot more hatred and contempt for him. Mm-hmm. But at the beginning, you just see him as a kind father, and information just kind of keeps pouring out through the film about all that he's done. Mm-hmm. At first, you're kind of with him, where like the son should be kind of grateful what's going on, and then you're just going to get more and more accounts of people who have been damaged by this reign.
Yeah,
and it's horrifying. And the only way that he knows how to process it is to lose his mind. Mm-hmm. And when you're looking at a director who's kind of ending his role of being a director, this is very like. The use of violence in this movie almost feels like a commentary on his previous films, because the violence in this is always horrifying. Yeah. You actually see blood, and it's very bright red. And the battle sequences, I mean, the first one is done...
The first one, which is more, less of a... There's really only one, I guess, battle sequence, but that first one, which is just like the siege, which is a slaughter... Yeah. Hidetori's men are just slaughtered, not only by his son, oldest son, but his middle son as well. They both team up to just kill him and destroy him. And they literally kill every single one of his men but him. And they just let him walk out. That set piece, everyone who's seen the film knows the piece where he's just sitting there and arrows are just flying all around him, and he should have died there.
Yeah.
It's where he should have died. And then his soul wanders the land after that.
Yeah.
And there's no peace out there.
It's just such a different approach from Seven Samurai, which was we're violent men, but it's violent for a good reason.
Yeah.
Same with Yojimbo. This is a character who does violence. Other people do violence, but he does violence for a good reason. Mm-hmm. And this, no one does violence for a good reason. No. It is just, it's sometimes gross. It is just beautifully upsetting at times.
Yeah, and this film is compared often to Seven Samurai, I think. Partly because I think history remembers Ron and Seven Samurai as his two best films. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be compared against each other anyway. But also because they're the big samurai epic sort of that he did. Because I wouldn't classify Yojimbo as that. And I certainly wouldn't do that with Hidden Fortress.
No.
I mean, Kenji Mushai would. But
Throne of Blood.
Throne of Blood is still a more personal story, I guess.
Sure.
I don't know. It's not just that it's a Shakespeare story, but there's so much focus on Mifune.
Yeah.
And it's not even the whole breadth of Macbeth. This is King Lear and then some. So I still feel like maybe I'm wrong, but I do feel like Ron and Seven Samurai are the ones that are talked about the most. The movies couldn't be less similar. I mean, they are completely dissimilar.
Yeah.
Seven Samurai feels triumphant and then depressing. This feels gross and depressing. Like, they're bad people.
Yeah.
Pretty much everyone is bad. You have characters you like more and you might be relatable to, especially the youngest son, Saburo. But even when I think the best character and the most morally justified character, Lady Cade, I can walk out of the theater and someone can think she's evil. You know what I mean?
Because she just does so much manipulation and causes so much destruction. It is revenge, but it is also...
a woman in a man's world. That's the only way. And she single-handedly... brings down the entire family. I mean, I think she's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And her death is epic.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I love it. And she doesn't even care. It's like...
She did her role.
Exactly. So we'd be remiss to not bring up the death scene when the middle brother that's been manipulated this whole time for his royal guard walks in and just looks at her, just slices her head off, but the camera pans to the wall, and you just see the most epic splurt of blood ever hit the wall.
It's so much blood.
Yeah, he turns around.
Yeah.
Says, "Prepare to die."
and you see just images of war that you haven't seen before. Like in the opening siege, you see a man holding his own arm, and just so many upsetting images that I've never seen in a Kurosawa film. And we talked so much in the past about how perfect all of his shots are. They're a lot looser this time. I mean, still, like, no one's like being overlapped and whatnot, but it's not like the exact like perfect thing. It's kind of just it's a more relaxed film. And in that relaxation, it's more powerful in a way.
I think so too. I think a huge credit is due to Tetsuya Nakata, who plays the Hidetora. He's also Harry Carey. He's the lead in Harry Carey, which is another Japanese film by Kobayashi. He also premiered earlier in Kurosawa film Kenji Musha, which I prefer to Ron. He's incredible in this film.
Oh, man.
He's always so incredible against a backdrop that he's 1/100th of.
Yeah.
Like, as far as shooting loose, my favorite shot is him walking out of the humongous gates after all of his men have been killed, and the army's just watching him, just letting him walk away.
Yeah.
Into the wasteland, basically.
Partly because what else can this guy do? Mm-hmm. He is nothing anymore.
Yeah.
He was the Lord Commander, now he is nothing.
He's nothing. Just walking
He's
away.
just
He
an
couldn't
old
even
man.
kill himself.
Yeah.
He didn't even have a weapon to kill himself.
Oh, man. The film is incredible, and I really enjoyed the portrayal of the three brothers. They always felt very distinct and very... It was shocking how their plots kind of played out. We did the spoilers, obviously, in this podcast, and they all meet their demise in very different ways and different times than you think.
Yeah.
Taro is gone really early in the movie.
Yeah.
And even a quiet moment.
Yeah. And what's weird is he's probably the brother that I like the least of the three.
Oh, yeah, he's awful.
But the middle brother, because at least the middle brother's being manipulated.
He has ignorance on his side.
Yeah, he's ignorance on his side. Exactly. But he still kills his own brother. I mean, these people are gross.
Yeah.
like they're really, really
and
disgusting
Saburo
people.
is not in most of the film because he is banished at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I found it so fascinating that he was the one that Hidetori was so cruel to in the opening scene.
Because he told him the truth.
Yeah. And he banished him and just really, hurt his reputation a lot. And ultimately, he's the one who's the kindest to Hidetori.
Yeah.
I think it's just an amazing, wonderful thing that Hidetori only appreciated at the very end. And then, of course, Saburo dies.
Yes.
In his arm, basically.
And that's too much for Hidetori to take.
Yeah.
He has a heart attack right there, and one of the most epic heart attacks ever.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
A little great use of foreshadowing in the film, too, at the very beginning when Hidetora just does fall asleep. Saburo cuts some brush off a tree and gives him some shade.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's nice.
The other one's just, we're going to leave him there, and he does that.
Yeah.
He obviously really cared about his father, but that's misguided too because his father's an evil man.
Yeah.
So that I guess that's the kind of the thing that I will get into it more in the wrap up. But Kenji Musha was made before this. It's a longer epic, believe it or not. If you haven't seen it, everyone sees Ron instead of Kenji Musha. It's crazy to me that a 3 hour and 5 minute epic can be made to audition Ron.
Yeah.
Because Ron's the movie Kurosawa wanted to make, but before he made Ron, he wanted to make sure he could make a movie like that. So George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola financed his Kenji Musha, which ended up winning the Venice Film Festival.
Yeah.
But that one has characters that are good. You know what I mean? Whereas this one, everyone's pretty gross.
Well, it's his third Shakespeare adaptation. First one we're covering, but he had previously done Throne of Blood, which is another samurai film, which is Macbeth. Then he did The Bad Sleep Well, which is Hamlet as a corporate espionage film. And now he has King Lear. And King Lear is always the fascinating thing people do, it's always the brilliantly aged actors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ian Holm.
Yeah. Ian Holm, Ian McKellen. You get brilliant portrayals of King Lear because it almost I now have something to kind of say about this. And this is just such a fascinating adaptation of it. And obviously the daughters are now brothers. That fits more into the Japanese culture at this time. And it's a really fantastic Shakespeare movie.
Yeah. So I guess, as far as plot's concerned, I can't blame him for what Shakespeare wrote. And you do have Saburo there, but at the end of the day, Saburo's still supporting a bad guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's nice and kind, and I think would probably be a great leader. But at the end of the day, that is what he's doing. And if Lady K did one bad thing, it was getting him killed.
Right.
I guess. But she's my favorite character in the movie.
She's brilliant. Yeah. And her portrayal is so interesting because she is so confident throughout the entire thing. Mm-hmm. Like, she's never nervous about what she's doing, and she just keeps changing her tactics all the time. Like, when she was married to Taro, the oldest brother, she basically said, like, you know, if you're really the Lord Commander, you should act like it.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of, like, that's the kind of thing that would tick him off and makes him do rash decisions. Whereas Jiro, the younger brother, when Jiro is presenting Taro's armor to her, she is disgusted that he's wearing it and makes him strip down in front of the entire public. Immediately she knows that this guy is way weaker than Taro.
He's weak.
And does crazy things. Like, after sleeping with him, one says, you should really kill your wife.
Yeah, and he agrees.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, it's an order that won't be carried out by the guy that ends up cutting her head off later, but she still ends up getting her killed anyway.
Yeah.
I guess she's a good character, too, but there's not a lot of her there. I think that's what you see a lot with women. And this is the woman I point to when the Kurosawa criticism pops up about he's disinterested in women. I think the Lady Kate is now, granted, you're not going to get it every film, but Lady Kate is an example of one fantastic woman. And I always you see it a lot in medieval pictures. You also see it in feudal pictures, feudal Japan, for instance, where the reality is, and this is not a popular way of thinking nowadays, but there is a popular TV show that uses it quite well. Women in this society have to use separate weapons than men. Mm-hmm. That's just the reality. And guess what? Sometimes those are equally valid. Cersei in Game of Thrones does the same type of thing, right? She's not a man. She doesn't win with her sword. She has to figure out another way to do it. And it's usually playing to masculinity's ego, to embarrassments, playing to over testosterone, playing into that, using that, manipulating that. And I always love when that is navigated perfectly, because not every woman has to be Joan of Arc. Mm-hmm. You can have a woman like this who is strong in the shadows and works that way, manipulating the men who are the would-be heroes with the swords and that sort of thing. And she, I think, hits it fantastically. That's why I love Lady Macbeth. I always love that character that can manipulate the man because they're a woman. Embracing that. And I think this is a great example of that.
I mean, ultimately, two characters are the most successful in this film. It's her and the other guy who sweeps in and takes all the land after they all kill themselves.
Yeah, who's not really talked about all that much.
He's hinted at the very beginning going like, he just wants to take all this thing. And he does.
Yes. And the thing is, he doesn't have to do anything because they war amongst themselves, and he's just able to take it.
He was very kind to Saburo and won at the end.
Yep.
To wrap it up, let's actually use Game of Thrones as a transition, because in the most recent season for us, season 6, there was a very epic battle episode called The Battle of the Bastards, and in an interview, the director said his major influence was the film Ron. We need to talk about the epic scope of these battle sequences.
Yeah.
Oh my, so many horses.
Yes, so particularly in a 4K restoration that we saw, and being in the movie theater, things that I was struck by were the dirt flying in the air, the people falling out of the horses. And this is not CGI, folks.
No.
This is happening.
There are always like hundreds of extras in a shot.
Yes, hundreds, if not, and few with thousands, I would say. People flying off the horses. There's one in particular in one of the earlier sequences. It's a guy that is knocked off a horse, and in the same shot is on the ground while horses ride over him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm in the theater. I don't know how they did that.
Yeah.
Because it's one shot. It's early in the film. It's that siege of the castle where Hedatoria is. Editora. I think it's Editora. I've been saying Editora. Regardless,
Yeah.
everyone knows what we're talking about. That during that scene, a guy is shot off his horse, hits the ground, and the horse is right over him. As far as epicness and battle sequences pre-Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings introduces CGI, and then we opened up, that was a whole can of worms we opened up there. It was Pandora's box, because I continually get less and less and less impressed by watching computer-animated soldiers charge at each other. It worked in Lord of the Rings because it was the first. It still works in Lord of the Rings. But here, you get the real thing. You get the real thing, and it's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. And Lord of the Rings is a little different because they needed to have thousands. That's part of fantasy. This worked, I thought, so well.
It's also a film, and I rarely say this is a film that could only be in color, because each one of the brothers has a distinct color with all of their soldiers and all their flags. So you have yellow, red, and blue. And so when all things are happening, all this chaos is happening, you always know which side is fighting which, because you see the yellow and red clash. You see the blue and then the white of the other guy.
Well, I think it works great because then you don't have to spend... This is part of the problem with foreign films, particularly in Kurosawa films, because they tend to be epic in scope and you have tons of characters. I don't have to worry about the characters' names.
Yeah.
That helps me a lot. I don't have to reference the Mifune character. I'm able to identify the name with a color, which is a thing that you don't have to worry about here.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think it works flawlessly. And this got so much exposure in the West, Ron did. I don't know the exact numbers, but Kurosawa did 30 films in like 15 years, and then he did like 6 for the next 30. And this was one of the ones he did, and this got a lot of exposure in the West, and I can't help but think that might be a part of why, is because he knew it helps us keep things straight.
Yeah.
I think that helped.
I mean, it was up for a number of Oscars, which was wonderful, and it won Best Costume Design, perhaps because of these colors.
Naturally.
And the shocking thing was, I didn't know this until today, it was nominated for Best Director.
Yeah, get this, everyone in podcast land. It was nominated for Best Director. Best Director. But not nominated for Best Foreign Film.
Or Best Picture.
Well, I was about to say, if you're nominated for Best Director, you think you're going to probably get a picture nod or something close to it. Not only not get the picture nod, you're not getting the foreign film nod either, which I just find incredibly ironic, considering Rashomon kind of kicked off the whole foreign film thing.
Oh yeah, and I mean the other nominees are for cinematography and art direction. So typically things given to big period piece films anyway.
By the way, Out of Africa won all of those.
Except for costume design, but yeah, Sidney Pollack.
I'm looking at it here. Out of Africa, and just these 3 awards won more than Spotlight did.
Yeah. Sidney Pollack won Best Director for South Africa. I don't dislike Sidney Pollack, but Kurosawa is better.
Yes, Akira Kurosawa is better. At the end of the day, I guess my final take on Ron was because, again, watching it this time, I was... And part of that probably helped that we were in the theater and we got the 4K restoration and all that jazz. Think we just watched all that jazz. We did. Yeah. We definitely did. Getting that experience with Ron, it changed my way of thinking about it. Now, I always saw Ron as not necessarily overrated, but I just didn't think it was... It's always considered to be the best or second best Kurosawa film. And I always thought that it wasn't that it was overrating Ron. I just felt like it was being unfair to some of the others, like Ikiru. But here, it definitely moved up for me. Seeing it that way was fantastic, and I loved the 4K imperfections that it brought, like these battles, these armies charging with each other. I remember seeing a guy trip and fall, which I was able to notice. I don't think it was noticed. I saw a guy juggling with a sword and drop it. It's not a mistake. It's some dude in that army charging that dropped his sword. That's the way it worked for me, and I thought it was great. I really did. It was a great experience.
I always, something I noticed about just the bigness of the army. Horses just looked so disinterested, and because they're not typically in these kind of films you have ridiculous headwear for the horses to make them look scarier or whatever, more epic. These are just horses, and I just love these big sequences. A lot of them just flicking their tail. Having a fine old time in the field. this is what war looked like.
It's worth watching this movie to watch that guy fall off the horse and then watch horses run over him.
Yeah.
I don't know how they did that.
Which we've said, I think, almost every episode for the show.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And it's time to now wrap it up. And I know, I'm upset too.
Too soon.
But you will be able to join us on Wednesday when we're going to have our final thoughts on Akira Kurosawa. We're going to talk about the 5 films we've covered, which are Rashomon, Ikiru, Seven Samurai, High and Low, and Ron. We'll talk about other films in his canon. But until then, you can email us at letstake5@theartofmore.com. You can go to theartofmore.com and you can leave a comment on this thread and any other thread of any of our episodes. And while you're there, you can check out my other podcast, which is called The Immortals, which is a silly podcast where the aforementioned Sarah, Pedro, and also Lee and Adam and myself, we review one of the 1001 movies, albums, food, songs, children's books, and TV shows you must see before you die. And the one we reviewed this week, the movie was Jurassic Park. So that was a really fun discussion. Check that out. Eric, where else can we find you?
YouTube, Constant Diversion. I'm embarrassed because there hasn't been a video in a while. It's being worked on.
But there is still a back catalog of fantastic videos that you can check out.
Yes, there definitely is. Constant Diversion's the YouTube channel.
Yep. And our Twitter is The Immortals Pod. And also, now every episode of Let's Take 5 is on The Immortals YouTube channel. So if that's how you prefer to listen to this, there you go.
Why not?
There's an option for you.
Yeah, I saw that the other day. I logged on there and looked, and there they were.
There they were. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll catch you on Wednesday, and goodbye.